This video is brought to you by Tom's Diecast Kits and Collectibles. So for this rebuild, I'm starting off with a police version of the Lamborghini Gallardo and want to make it into a street version. So I'm going to strip off all of the police parts and all of the other parts that I need, strip the paint, and start the rebuild and repaint process. So I started out with a police version of the Lamborghini Gallardo that the Italian police gets from Lamborghini every once in a while, and I'm just going to strip it down as usual, remove all of the parts that I won't need, and then carefully disassemble all the parts that I will need to repaint and reuse later on before stripping the paint off. So as usual, with all of the plastic parts now removed, I could put it in a small bag, add some of the paint stripper, which is a bit discolored as I've used it a couple of times, and some of the paint residue just gives it a different color, but it is still usable, so that's why it has a different color. When all the paint is removed from the body and the paint stripper has done its job, I just pour the remainder of the paint stripper back into the bottle for later use on a next project and rinse the body off, removing any of the paint stripper that might be left or just any of the paint particles. In this case, I needed to move on to filling up the holes where the police sirens and lights were on the roof in order to get that as smooth as possible. I'm just filling it up a couple of times with some super glue, sanding it smooth, filling it again until I'm happy with the result, and could then move on to scribing out the panel lines just to make them a bit deeper and remove some of the residue that might still be left in there from the paint. The final step before primer would be to sand down the body with some 400 grit just to make it smooth and remove any of the blemishes or deeper scratches or imperfections that might be in the body, and then just clean it off by wiping it over with a paper towel and move it into the spray booth to apply a couple coats of primer. After a couple coats of primer, I just let it dry and moved on to painting it in a yellow. I did not have the exact Lamborghini yellow, so I decided to go with a Ferrari yellow, which is really close for the base color, and then add a pearl on top of it from a Renault color, pretty much used on some of the RS models, and I believe on some of the Formula 1 cars as well. It did have the correct look, so I decided to go with it, and I was really happy that I did because it looked really cool. I let the coats of paint dry for about 10 minutes in between and then moved on to applying 2 more coats of the yellow until I achieved full coverage and applied about 2 coats of the pearl. Since I don't yet have any decals for the emblems to replace on the bodies, I just went straight ahead onto the clear coating stage to give it a nice glossy clear. A couple coats, and a couple days later after drying, I moved on to carefully masking off the rear section in order to paint that in a matte black, and I did the same for the window trim on the side. A couple of the smaller details on the body, like the grills on the rear and also some of the inlets on the side, were a lot easier just to paint by hand in a brush than to mask it off, as the masking wouldn't really be as sharp around the corners, and the brush just does a super nice job on that. With a lot of those smaller details now on, I could start some of the assembly with some Super Gold Plus from Bob Smith Industries. This is a super glue which is safe to use on clear parts and does bond painted parts together really well. The interior that came in the model wasn't really that detailed, but it didn't really need a lot of work either. It does have a really nasty plastic looking shine to it, so I decided just to reprime it and repaint it in a matte black to make it a lot more realistic and not as shiny and fake looking like plastic, and in this case just to give it a bit more of a leather look. Some additional details were added with some silver. Again, not that many were needed, so it was a really quick job here. And there you have it, another one in the box. A really nice quick rebuild from a pretty okay looking police car into a nice yellow Lamborghini. This one is cool to add to my collection, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video as well. If you have any suggestions for future builds, feel free to check out the Tom's website and leave me comments down below which you would like to see me build in the future. I hope this video can help you out in this process, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and also any suggestions on which how-to videos you'd like to see me do in the future, and I'll take those into consideration. This video was produced for Tom's Diecast Kits and Collectibles by the Scale Modeling channel.